Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Oh, what's the point, right? Let's all just take a break from the show for a while and just wait for the impeachment that isn't going to happen. Or maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. It's a tough day. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, October 23rd, 2019. Time for yet another show. And it is a Wednesday. So at least there will be help here today. We'll have Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter with us as usual. And, well, we have a lot to tear through today. But that's always the case, and Wednesday is always a crowded day. Where do you want to begin today? Yesterday was Bill Taylor's testimony before the three committees, or deposition, I guess. Testimony both and a deposition. And I guess everyone has got a hold of his prepared statement, his opening statement. It was actually circulated first that I saw. The actual text circulated as iPhone, or I guess smartphone pictures taken of actual printed pages of his testimony. I think it is now in more digestible electronic form out there. And if that was 15 pages, that was some pretty quick reading. I think that's what the number that was put on it, and it was easy going. So I took a look through it. Most of you probably already have. It appears that, long story short, I guess, it appears that the White House and Republican position on his testimony and on all the testimony taken to date, actually, is to simply deny that it says what it says. Not that the interpretation they give it is different, but to deny that the actual words spoken were ever spoken. Which I guess is of a piece of their, with their strategy to say that it can't possibly have involved a quid pro quo because no one ever spoke the words quid pro quo. By the way, I have a solution for that one. I mean, it is a 5-year-old's argument, but no one ever said quid pro quo, so it can't be a quid pro quo. Well, you just said quid pro quo. I heard you say it. No, but I was saying that I would never said it. And you can just plug your ears and say, la, 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 I can't hear you. You said quid pro quo, you're guilty, la, 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 la. Why not just do that? I mean, they're just standing there saying, this morning, for instance, the president angrily tweeting, among many other things, that neither he nor Taylor, that is, Taylor, nor any other witness, has provided testimony that the Ukrainians were aware that military aid was being withheld. And so, therefore, this is another angle on this. Therefore, there can't be a quid pro quo because there's no quo here. The aid that was withheld was supposed to be the quo, I guess. You give me the quid, dirt on Biden, I'll give you the quo, the aid that's being withheld. But since Taylor and no other witness, according to Donald Trump, and actually Fox and Friends, that's where he got this information, none of them said that the Ukrainians were aware of the aid being withheld, and so therefore it's impossible for them to have known, and therefore impossible for there to be a quid pro quo, except, of course, yes, it does. Taylor's testimony explicitly says that they were aware of the aid being withheld. They have a meeting with Zelensky, and his first question to them is, why is the aid being withheld? I think that's pretty compelling evidence for his knowledge of the aid being withheld. But that's what they're doing. They're just sitting there saying, no, his testimony didn't say that, when it did. I mean, it's like running a stop sign and saying, that was a go sign, officer. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how long we can sustain anything or have any discussions about anything, no matter what the topic area is, with people who do this, but I guess we're compelled to do it. The newspaper says he's the president, and you know what we're all supposed to do when the president says things, and I guess we're stuck in that infinite loop. All right, well, that's just the biggest item on my mind today, but I don't see how much else. There's not room for that much else. That's why we bring in issue area experts from all over the place. And here's one now, Greg Dworkin. Good morning, Greg. How you doing? Oh, no, I can't hear you. Is your mute button on?
Hey, David, it's actually Steve. I'm sorry about that, buddy.
Oh, well, see, that would explain it. Steve, what are you doing?
I am on sort of a, I guess you could call it
Yes.
midlife crisis trip. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Are you, and you're in Greg's house because that's where this happens.
That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry if we threw you there, man.
Yes. All right.
I'm in Greg's studio.
Everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Stephen Andrew, Darkside, everyone.
That's right. Yes, sir.
And what have you done with Abby? Where is the dog? Why are you doing this? Okay.
Well, basically, I kind of retired and just went on a big old road trip and started in Tucson.
Okay.
Went through a lot of checkpoints and stuff. That's definitely changed. We can talk about that a little bit in a second.
Oh, yeah. All right.
I've written a lot about hurricanes, David, over the years. So for some reason, I decided to go driving right through the middle of the worst part of Nestor. I mean, it was only a tropical storm. That turned out to be a pretty bad decision.
Oh.
Talk a little bit about that. And
okay.
Then we can talk about some other things. Is that okay with you?
Yes. The president's being impeached. I don't know if you're aware of that. Maybe the storm, covered that up. But okay, well, congratulations, I guess, on retirement and enjoying yourself and driving around. That's what a surprise. Okay. I wouldn't have guessed. But all right, so Greg's still alive, right? He's there.
He is here.
Okay.
He's pacing around, so I'm pretty sure he's still alive. Yes,
okay, very good. Just checking.
He'll be on
a
pretty
lot
quick.
Of people
He just wanted me to jump on for a second.
Sure, yeah. I assume you've been keeping up with the news of the day. How about that? The testimony doesn't say what it says. Not that I interpret it differently, but that word isn't in there. Yes, it is. I have the paper right here. Does that strike you as odd?
I thought it was a little strange, and I agree with you. That sounds like something I would have heard back in elementary school, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't say quid pro quo, but he didn't say neener. You know?
That can't be teasing.
Yeah, that's just nuts. But that's apparently where we're at. We've got the pro wrestling era president here. So
yeah, I guess that's true. I guess Jesse Ventura foreshadowed it all, I guess.
Jesse Ventura actually looks kind of good.
In comparison, yes.
Compared to what we're looking at.
I'm sure that in Minnesota it must be awfully disappointing to have elected a guy like that thinking this is it. This is the sea change, for like we're never going to have a corrupt government again.
Ever again.
And then, we do the thing. We make it through the wrestler governor, and then we go and elect other people.
Yeah.
Things go on.
So I lost track of it a little bit, but Greg filled me in pretty good.
Okay.
So things have only gotten worse for the Trump administration.
Yes, that is.
And things weren't great. They weren't going real good in the first place.
No, they weren't. And I guess it was plain what direction we were going in. Obviously, I also see this last couple of days has somehow revived the news. Well, not the news value, but he's on the news of Matthew Whitaker, the previous acting attorney general, who's now got a revived career getting on television this morning and saying, of all things, that thanks for telling us, former attorney general, that abuse of power is not a crime. They're now accusing my president of abuse of power, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a crime. You can't.
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
So that's a little troubling as well. I don't know what else to throw out there as in terms of a early morning shock value. So, yes, I do. I'm right. Yesterday's story from Cosmopolitan magazine revealing that the president, who's still in the hospitality business, chiefly, we're told from the chief of staff of the White House, we had a little hospitality story from him. We already knew that he was a bit of a pageant creeper in his day. But it turns out that this story is that the backstage at the pageants wasn't the only place he was barging in on women unexpected. That as the owner of the Trump Plaza Hotel, this was a great story. This will make you feel good.
I saw this. This is creepy amazing? As shit.
This is
oh my God,
the craziest. I can't believe this isn't the top news, and it wasn't even my top news. And I said I can't believe it. He's, as owner of the Plaza Hotel, I guess, I don't know whether back in those days, whether they had those electronic keys and just give me another one of those, or you just take a spare key. As owner of the hotel, he felt he was entitled to spare keys to the rooms of guests. And when he found out that there was a particular supermodel he was interested in, who was staying at the Plaza Hotel, and I imagine, by the way, he invited her. She was coming to New York. He had been pestering her on the phone for weeks, apparently. Come stay at my Plaza Hotel. It's so beautiful. I'll comp you. I don't know whether he did or not. Probably not. Probably charged her anyway. But he just went down to the desk and helped himself to a spare key to this model's room and snuck into her room at night and got caught. She sat up in bed and found him creeping into her bedroom.
I wonder where the plan went from there on his end. You know, what was the next step in that?
Probably, I think she sits up and says, "Your pastel yellow blazer is so sexy. Get in this bed right now." I assume he thought he was going to sneak in. Although, honestly, I don't know where the idea of sneaking in. I thought he would come in and he would be caught and he would say, you know, as the owner of the hotel, I'm just trying to make sure that the place is clean. Are you being well taken care of?
Right,
Is the service up to snuff? But then to sneak in the dark, I don't know what he thought he was. I think he was going to crawl into the bed. But
yeah, I mean, David, you got to wonder, does that ever actually work for anybody, no matter how famous they are?
I don't think that.
Right?
I do wonder that, but I think I try to put that thought out of my mind and say, first and foremost, wow, this is criminal activity, and the president's a filthy pervert and belongs in prison decades before he ever considers running for president. What are we talking about? You cannot. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of bad stories, and each one has a cover story that for a stupid pervert works mentally, but this one doesn't. I don't know.
I just, when I saw that, it just sort of hit me. I mean, you know, that doesn't sound like it would come off as a real romantic gesture or anything that would really go over well. I'm just a Y chromosome. I don't mean to speak for things I do not understand, but I think I can understand the creep factor, and that one pretty much goes to DEFCON 1.
That one, yeah. I mean, that's insane. And as it turns out, the only thing that saves her in this is that she's actually involved with somebody, and her boyfriend, I guess is what you would say, is there with her, and a man jumps up and stops this.
Wow.
It's not even a matter of her being able to sit up and say, "What are you, crazy? I didn't, gee, I'm sorry, I got my signals crossed." No, nothing like that, right? And she doesn't talk him out of it. The guy is there and chases him out of the room. He runs away. He slams the door, runs away, and gets in the elevator and goes to the lobby. I mean, so we read the rest of the story. They chase him down to the lobby, but then there's a crowd of people there, and then he has his bodyguards stuff these two back into the elevator and send them back up. I can't believe that they haven't said who they are yet, although I guess, as they said, we're remaining anonymous because we're still in the fashion industry and we fear retribution. And they didn't even bother mentioning, well, the guy is now president of the United States. I fear assassination. But I don't know. I think at this point, maybe you should just... I would hope that somebody would say, they should make a big deal out of this, but they're not.
Well, instead, I mean, he's Mr. Hospitality, right? And we find out, just get a little peer inside, little tiny piece of his MO.
Yeah.
And this guy wants to, bring in the world leaders at Doral, right, where presumably he could get a key, right?
Yeah.
If he wanted to.
Right.
And the mind just reels about
now,
where that could go.
I think that all the world leaders are sort of on alert whenever they go to a G7. They say, all right, well, we don't know anything about the venue here. So you got to operate as though the host country's intelligence community is listening, which is sad, but I think that they do conduct themselves that way for the most part. And by the way, like when the American president travels, they bring these portable skiffs, where they can actually have conversations if they need to in secure conditions. It's crowded, it's uncomfortable, but they do. But I don't know if anybody has ever thought, I'm being eavesdropped on by the venue ownership, the private ownership of the venue. The hotel people are. And imagine it's the same thing. The government and the head of government and the hotel owner are the same person. And he'll pardon himself for eavesdropping on you. Some of his properties are we know to be wired for sound, probably, and definitely for video, although it's only rumor at this stage that he's actually videotaping you changing in your hotel room. But
oh God, I got to go stay at a hotel tomorrow night here, David. You're kind of
it's not a Trump property,
creeping me
right?
out. No,
right.
sir. Well, not as far as I know.
President Marriott was implicated today, and
yeah.
Okay, well, hotels are probably largely unsafe, and you should stay away from them entirely. Everyone stay in your own house. But
I got to thank Greg for that one. He really showed me a lot of hospitality here, and not in the creepy walk into the room in the middle of the night way, at least as far as I know.
Right.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that.
Okay.
And I understand there was some testimony yesterday. I guess you guys probably already talked about that, but I caught part of it, but it.
Well, we haven't spoken about what actually was said, and of course, another one of these closed sessions. The Republicans also falling back on. Why are they conducting these sessions in secret? What are they afraid of? And there's no due process, and all this. All of these things fall apart as well. Of course, all process that is due has so far been afforded. But I don't know why they're so intent on. Also, I mean, I imagine at some point Americans say, "You keep saying this is secret testimony, and I keep reading the testimony in the newspaper. What do you mean?" So I don't know if this one is working. But and so I guess this has led them to move on to it simply didn't say what it said. And I don't know how long they think that's going to be sustainable for either. But I guess in Fox News world it works. I'm sure there are people sitting there who get their news only from Fox who say it's true. They never said the words quid pro quo, and all the testimony. This is the most amazing part. Is that they play tapes over and over on Fox News of Republicans in the hearing, leaving the hearing, saying that Taylor testified that there was no quid pro quo and that the Ukrainians didn't even know they weren't receiving the aid.
But so that's what they took from it, or claimed they did anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas the Dems I saw coming out of there were like almost visibly shaking.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what happened in there that they didn't already know, that we didn't already know happened. True. But maybe you could enlighten me a little bit. What was so different about that testimony that really put the nail in the coffin that everybody was talking about? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either. I mean, to some extent, I think they may be playing as well, which is, I guess if you really wanted to both sides this thing, you could say Republicans are coming out and saying they never said that anything wrong happened. They denied all wrongdoing in the testimony. And the Democrats are saying, I've never heard such horrible wrongdoing admitted to in this case, except for yesterday when I said the same thing about a different set of testimony. They are saying the same things. I guess Taylor's testimony was somewhat different in the sense that he was, for one thing, he was saying, I heard the quid pro quo being proposed, and I asked them, but isn't this a quid pro quo, which would be a bad situation, to say the least? And they said, no, it isn't. And then he went on to explain, well, what is a quid pro quo? That you would be giving this,
I saw that. Okay.
and they would be giving
that.
that.
So this is not a quid pro quo. Now let me give you a quid pro quo.
Yeah, right. I guess. And the other thing they were latching onto, it seems, is at least one of the Republicans, I guess the one that Trump is quoting today, John Ratcliffe, and he was trying to make Ratcliffe, which I forget which cabinet position he was thinking of plugging him into recently. Director of National Intelligence, DNI, to replace Dan Coats, and even that wouldn't even fly in a Republican Senate.
No, it wouldn't fly at a traffic stop, man. I mean, if you handed your license over to the cop with a $100 bill and said, "Now, officer, this is not a bribe.
Right.
If you keep this $100 bill and see your way fit to not give me a ticket, I want you to feel like you're taking a bribe."
Right. It's not a quid pro quo because I didn't say
man.
that.
That's a bribe.
Yeah.
And if that's on a camera, if he's recording you, you're probably going to have another little charge into your speeding or whatever. So
I guess they could
that just seemed a little odd, a strange little
That's not me.
Strange little patch to hide behind.
Yes.
But I guess that's all they got.
Ratcliffe's claim was, you see, well, it's not a quid pro quo because the truth is that Trump never intended to give that aid to the Ukrainians.
That's right. He was going to
so therefore, it's not a quo.
So that would be what? A total abuse of power, violation of Congress. I mean, that's not a better situation, is it?
No, it's not. It's illegal to have withheld the aid. I mean, it was duly appropriated. Duly being another word they're leaning on very heavily these days. But yeah, it's not a quid pro quo because Donald Trump never intended to honor his part of the illicit agreement. That's not going to work either.
So he was going to get his dirt.
Yes.
Then string him out even further and make, I guess, Putin happy that he can't stop the tanks from rolling out of Crimea into the rest of Ukraine. So it's like a twofer. It's like a win-win, I guess, from that point of view.
Two crimes and therefore 2 wrongs. Guess what? At the time they made a right. This is really something. What an extraordinary president, ladies and gentlemen. That's what their presentation was.
That's not just close to evil. I mean, there's not even a barbed wire fence in between evil. That's just evil, man.
It's pretty extraordinary that they would lean on that, and and as I mentioned, the other language, Kevin McCarthy's favorite thing. This is a coup being executed against a duly elected president, and I also would like everybody to note that they are not entitled to the phrase duly elected here. This is an impeachment inquiry into whether or not he cheated in the election. You can't say you can't impeach him because he was duly elected. The whole question is that he wasn't duly elected, and here's the reason why. And P.S., a lot of it is treason, and some of it is just petty crime. But, we don't say that a president who's being impeached because he didn't belong in office because he cheated in the election by soliciting foreign aid is duly elected. I mean, they do. They don't believe that
Meanwhile, back at the DOJ,
yes,
you can't indict him. You can't charge him. Mm-hmm. You can't even investigate him. You can only impeach a president.
Right, and maybe not even that anymore either, according to the letter from the White House counsel's office. It says impeachment is not even a real thing. And now he says the emoluments clause is phony. I don't know. There's no dealing with it. On the quid pro quo front, I saw our friend Mark Sumner's tweet from I guess late yesterday, just saying has someone at the White House possibly mixed up the law with Harry Potter? You don't have to actually say quid pro quo or wave a wand to commit extortion. And he adds at the end there, impeachius immedius.
Mark can turn a phrase. He is a good writer for sure. Absolutely.
Well done. All right. Well, since I guess I better say something since you're not as familiar with how these things work. But it's 9:24. We have a break coming up in a few minutes here. But I guess we could just let you take us to the break, and we will then regroup perhaps. And do you want to read all the polls to us?
No, that would be something I think Greg is definitely more prepared to do.
They're just numbers, man. You could read it.
I mean, I found it interesting that instead of just saying impeachment, it was now impeachment and removal at
isn't that something?
50% or more in a couple of cases. So
so
there's still momentum. There's still what we would say in the storm business. It's back building. Like there's momentum filling up in the back, right?
It does feel that way. I mean,
and I wonder where it's coming from. Is it coming still from Dems who are kind of conservative? Is it some of the Republicans, the 5 to 10% maybe that are sort of persuadable? Because believe me, down in Texas, I live around a whole bunch of them that are not persuadable. David, there's nothing that could happen. That would.
There are definitely some people that are cheering this on that say, this is. You just can't change my mind. And the fact that he's making all these liberals who study law books angry is a good thing.
Trigger them.
Triggered much, libs, reading your Constitution, saying this is the way things should be and that criminals should go to jail. Yeah, well, I don't know where the momentum is coming from. I assume that for a while it was coming from more conservative Dems who had been listening to advice that impeachment was an extreme remedy and it would tear the country apart or whatever. And because I think at the time, earlier in the process, they were saying, well, it was hard enough to get them to say, well, we should make inquiries and let the evidence, take us where it will. And then now it's like, well, the evidence is overwhelming. What do you say now? And the Dems, I guess, are embarrassed to say, I'm going to ignore it all for reasons.
We've got kind of an extreme situation, here to retort to your extreme remedy quip that you had. We're in an extreme situation here. So I think, he's going to get impeached. Just what happens after that.
Yeah.
I guess.
And now that and people are sort of preparing themselves for it, and no one is under any illusions about it being easy to find the votes to remove him. But I am finding a lot of previously hesitant Democrats appear to be making comments along the lines of, well, it just needs to be done for the record, if nothing else. You need to establish that this is wrong. And others are coming to the realization that, we're going to have to, Republicans are going to be called on to defend their position here, and it's going to be extraordinarily awkward at some point to simply say the opposite of what everyone is reading.
Right. Well, it looks to me like I'm about ready to hand Greg over to you, and you mentioned you're going to take a break here. Does that sound about right? Okay.
Yes, in a few seconds we'll bring in our music that ordinarily alerts everyone that our break is 30 seconds away. This is what it sounds like.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to blow the music intro for you.
No, that's okay. It's everyone knows it's coming. I meant to be a surprise, but this gives us a few seconds to wrap up. But everyone, I guess in case you tuned in late, Stephen Andrew, Darkside, has kidnapped Greg, apparently, and has taken over his house. This is no engineering trick. I just picked up the phone as usual, and it was him instead of Greg. Greg joining us in 2 minutes after the break. This has been a real pleasure. Glad to talk to you.
You too, David. I'll let him go now. Take care.
Okay. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal, except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Back with our regular lineup. Our pinch runner is out. That was interesting. So did he just ring your doorbell, or did he plan this?
Yeah, he just kind of showed up, and I said, "Fine, why don't you come in?" Okay. And it was the convenient timing because we had the show, and I said, "Why don't you go on the show and say hello and give us a little bit of a Texas point of view?" It was funny because we went out for breakfast yesterday, and I took him to the local diner. And I was trying to persuade him to go around interviewing Trump voters, but I couldn't get him to do it.
That happens. They're not going to doubt that you're a journalist. They'll just think, wow, it's happening to us finally here in Connecticut.
And they had a big sign up, we're a diner. Come interview Trump voters. And it was interesting listening to him do the show with you because, he lets you talk. He actually doesn't interrupt you, and I was thinking, I could try. Nah, I'm not going to do that.
You should have just come in and started speaking over the
I
microphone.
should have just interrupted both of you.
Right.
That would have been fun. It would have been more.
That's enough of this.
Realistic. But let's talk about politics here. I'm going to start with Peter Baker's tweet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What's he got?
Taylor's testimony. That's Envoy Taylor, Ambassador Taylor's testimony, illustrated the differences of the Trump impeachment inquiry.
Yes.
While the Nixon and Clinton cover-ups involved the integrity of America's system of justice, the Ukraine scandal also extends to matters of life and death as well as geopolitics on a grand scale. And that's a good segue into this morning's Quinnipiac poll, Q poll, which has some really, really fascinating features. For example, approval among American voters of the U.S. House impeachment inquiry. An inquiry to determine whether or not to bring impeachment charges against President Trump has reached its highest level at 55% approve, 43% disapprove, and last week it was 51-45. And in today's poll, for the first time, Democrats are way up and Republicans are way down, but independent voters approve 58-37, and that's pretty good. And nearly half of registered voters, 48, say President Trump should be impeached, while 46 say not. All right. Okay. And so the people that you still have to persuade are the independents. They're divided, 48% opposed and 42% in support. Now, my thinking is that's going to come around over time. Steve talked about the fact that you build pressure up before sometimes you see these things. And one of the things that's not directly a question of yes or no, because people are still kind of processing it, is the Q poll noting that in dealings with Ukraine, 59% of voters say Trump was pursuing his own personal interest. 33% say he was pursuing the national interest. And that's important. And independents say the president put his own personal interest over the national interest, 64-25. So I think it's interesting watching commenters like Hugh Hewitt this morning trying to make the cases. There was no quid pro, but if there were, it's not impeachable. We're beyond there wasn't. That's what Taylor's testimony today and yesterday and how it's processed today blew out of the water. The question then is, okay, is it impeachable? That's a different question. We'll get to that. But as the voters process this stuff, it's just interesting watching their evolution along that path, because that's what winds up happening. And, you could see that in the Q poll. You can see that in other polls, and including the, I think, Quinnipiac poll, are looking at, for example, how do you feel about what Trump did in Syria? And in that particular poll, in the Quinnipiac poll, I think a majority of white non-college voters disapprove, 51%, of what Trump is doing. So if you wind up losing people on one issue, there could be some bleed into losing them on another issue. That remains to be seen, but it's not impossible. And that's why it's an evolving situation, because the Kurdish situation in Syria is just getting worse. And, 31% overall of Republicans disapprove of Trump's handling of the Syria situation. So let's use that as a baseline and say that disapproval for Republicans on Trump in Syria is about the high water mark you're going to see for impeachment. If 31% of Republicans disapprove of Trump's handling of Syria, they're not going to get more than 31% of Republicans in the best possible situation for Democrats actually approving of impeachment. And where are they at now? They're at 10. They were at 5. It's moving. And if there is, in fact, presentable evidence that the people can digest, I don't see any reason why they can't move even further. But it's a process. It's slow. It takes people a while to sort of process this and then think about how they want to do this.
Well, time's up, everyone. Make up your mind already.
Now, just as an example, Josh Jordan posted a tweet just before the Q poll came out and noted where things are at on Trump should be impeached and removed, change in net points pre-inquiry. I think we may have covered this last time, but Fox News was 51-40, which was up 14 points pre-inquiry. Quinnipiac at the time was up 16. Now it's even more. Morning Consult was up 20. Harris X was up 16. Washington Post up 33. Gallup up 15. CNN up 20. So every week things are getting worse for Trump. And in fact, this new poll came out this morning showing, yes, in fact, that's exactly right. So things are moving and things do take time. And we just have to be aware of that. Now, simultaneously, we have a Democratic primary going on. And there are, of course, some fascinating stories about the big donors, many of whom aren't particularly politically savvy, but nonetheless have access, because when you have money, that's what happens, are going to the newspapers and saying, we're not totally sure that we're happy about the Democratic field that's here right now. Why don't you publish that? And maybe the Democrats will get their act together and they'll nominate somebody we like. And then you have to step back and say, okay, who is it that they like? Nate Silver makes the point this morning, the people they like are the people they know and the people they have access to. So if they don't like an Elizabeth Warren because she's going to tax them, who do you think they would like? And it's not going to be a Pete Buttigieg, and it's not going to be an Amy Klobuchar, because they may be the moderates of today, but they like people like John Kerry and Hillary Clinton, people they know, people they feel like they have access to, people who are in each other's Rolodexes, if you still use those sorts of things, except the electronic version on your phone. And so that's who they're comfortable with. And, the fact of the matter is it's just so much noise. It's a story for the paper. It's a Democrats in disarray story, but it really has no meaning whatsoever. The way we know that is, again, through polling. So there we're going to look not at the Q poll, but we're going to look at the new CNN poll. And the CNN poll out this morning is pretty fascinating. Where are things are at? Joe Biden's at 34%. In September, he was at 24%. Okay. Elizabeth Warren is at 19, was at 18. Sanders, 16, was at 17. Buttigieg still at 6. Harris, now 6, was 8. Klobuchar, 3, a surge from 1. And O'Rourke dropping from 5 to 3. So Biden is dominating the CNN poll and actually has made gains since the last time they did it in September. Despite everything that the chattering class is saying about where things are going, and I've told you this before, Biden has unexpected strength, and you may not like him. Maybe the donors are more comfortable with him. Maybe Mike Bloomberg is more comfortable with him and therefore won't run if Biden is the nominee. That's all background noise. The fact of the matter is that the voting public is okay with the choices, and it's okay where they are right now. That doesn't mean that Biden wins. He could fade. One of those other people could show up, and there's a long way between now and January. But if you're looking at polls as being spot checks of where you are right now, it's fascinating. And I think that there's a lot to be gained from that. Now, if you look at that same poll, they have some interesting questions here. One of them is, regardless of who you may support, which candidate do you think did the best job in the debate? Okay. The last debate that we had. And David, who do you think did best? You didn't see it, but you heard the coffee talk the next day. And who would you have said did well in the debate and who didn't?
I don't even know if I came away with. I'm ignoring them so intentionally now.
I know you work hard to do that. I don't let you.
It's I don't know who are people saying won the debate.
Well, the way I heard it was Pete Buttigieg had the best debate.
That's right. People did begin to say that. I think I found that just so difficult to believe.
Well, don't believe it.
Okay.
According to this poll, Elizabeth Warren did 28%. Joe Biden got 15%. I told you Biden had a decent debate. Bernie had 13. Pete had 11. Klobuchar had 4. Booker 2. Everybody else 1 or less. So according to this, the people who like Warren thought she did well.
Yes,
I was thinking about that because what happened in that debate is a lot of people decided she was a front runner, she had a target on her back, and they were going to go after her. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, okay, I actually thought she handled herself pretty well. And, there was this, not the one that's about to come out, but the one that just came out. Mark Hamill, replayed his Luke Skywalker character in the last Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And he was only a hologram, but when they tried to blow him up, he just walked right through it and kind of flicked off some dust off of his shoulders. And I thought Warren was kind of handling it that way. And it turns out, as I'm talking to people, a lot of women I know who support Elizabeth Warren say, okay, well, they attacked her and she handled it. What else is new? This is what happens all the time. Why do you think that's news? And so Warren actually, according to this, actually did quite well in the debate, and it doesn't matter because Biden is actually doing a whole lot better.
No. Well, status quo. That's no fun.
Status quo. So status quo is status quo, and that really hasn't changed all that much. I will tell you something, though. There's a new Massachusetts poll for WBUR, and one of the criticisms we've gotten for some of our loyal listeners is that Warren doesn't do that well in her home state.
Oh.
That people feel like she doesn't spend enough time at home and is, ignoring. Well, the WBUR poll for Massachusetts says Warren 33, Biden 18, Sanders 13, Buttigieg 7, Harris 3. So she's actually doing quite well in her own home state.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's a win. When does Massachusetts vote? When are they up in the rotation?
I don't know. It's not soon enough.
Yeah, it's never been Never been a thing. We only know
I don't even know when Connecticut votes, and I'm here. I just haven't looked it up yet. It doesn't matter. I'm way more focused on Iowa and New Hampshire right now.
Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. Never where I live.
Yeah, and then Super Tuesday. We can do those, and then all.
True.
And we'll see what happens.
Eventually, we'll get around to those.
I do know that Virginia's voting like for reals in 2 weeks.
Yes, right.
Don't want to forget that.
No, I'm trying to take care of that. Got one of the absentee ballots in for the college boys, so that's good.
Yay.
And that's coming up soon, and we have to pay attention to that. And but not yet. Those of us here, we got this. There's signs all over the place. That's what the yard signs do. No matter what is being ignored on a national level, there are actually signs in our neighbors' yards that remind us we have to vote in 2 weeks.
Right. Anyway, there's some interesting findings that people are picking up online. For example, Evan Siegfried, my Republican consultant friend who pays close attention to the youth vote, notes that voters 65 plus in the new Q poll, 38% approve of Trump. 60% disapproval and 55% strongly. The only age group or the majority, 51%, say Trump should be impeached and removed from office.
Yes.
Okay, so he's losing the seniors, but 44% of plurality say the Democrats have moved too far left.
Oh, well. But, I don't know. That's always being said. And we're always losing.
Yeah, it's always being said, and so
seniors.
Fine, whatever. I don't even know what that means. What will it mean if it turns out that Biden is the nominee but not Warren, just as a thought experiment? Will people still say that?
Yes.
Or is that a surrogate for I don't think that I'm ready to vote for Elizabeth Warren because I'm over 65 and it's just too different and I don't like change?
Yeah. Well, I guess it slightly changes. I imagine that they'll say, well, I like Biden, but most Democrats are still too liberal. They'll still just say that about the undefined mass of Democrats because that's how they grew up.
Right, but let's put this in perspective, turning again back to the CNN poll, and Will Jordan's collecting this for us. In April, okay, head-to-head with Trump, Biden was +6.
Yes.
Now, in October, Biden is +10.
Okay.
In April, Sanders was +6. Now Bernie is +9.
Oh, no.
In April, Warren was -1. Now she's +8.
Okay.
Mayor Pete was +3 back in April. Now he's +6. So the major Democratic candidates are all beating Trump head-to-head. So when you talk about electability, too far left, and what does that mean, it's really hard to figure it out other than to say Trump is really not doing that well. And again, I don't really care what the Moody's investment model says, the economic model.
Okay.
I just don't see Trump being the favorite here. He loses to everybody, which doesn't mean he can't win election. Again, always the caveats about the polls. But what the polls are telling us right now, when you look at the over 65s and when you look at all the other stuff, it turns out that in this particular moment in time,
yes.
All right. Trump is not a popular president. He's not a popular incumbent. And it's going to be really hard for him to get reelected. Doesn't mean he can't be. But that's why we talked the other day about the whole plan there is that you got to find new people.
All right. People that aren't being...
Because the regular old people are kind of sick of him. And the serious stuff just simply doesn't help.
It's not going to help very much. Abby doesn't think so either. Time for your neighbor to go work.
You can set your clock.
Right.
So here's another thing Will Jordan picked up about the CNN poll, which is just fascinating.
Yes.
CNN finds extremely enthusiastic about the next election.
Yes.
Enthusiasm.
A new all-time high.
Okay. Really? So we might have a turnout record sort of thing?
Yeah, it beats every measurement going back 16 years.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's to be expected. Certainly everything Rachel Bidikofer has told us about, she's going in a slightly different direction, but you would imagine that has to be accompanied with greater than usual enthusiasm, to say the very least. People are ready to do anything to be rid of Trump, and then people who are Trump supporters are ready to vote to do and do anything to keep him. So it makes sense.
But for example, all right, it's 10 points higher now with the election a year away than on the eve of the 2008 election. It's 47% extremely enthusiastic about voting now. It was 37% before the McCain-Obama election during the Great Recession.
It wasn't McCain that was doing it either.
And it wasn't, but I mean, the issue in terms of the economy collapsing was kind of a big deal.
True. There was that.
Right? And there was the excitement of Obama as a candidate. And despite that, 10 points higher now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and probably
phenomenal.
some
That's
excitement.
amazing. That's people are really into doing what they need to do. But that means that, again, also as Rachel Bidikofer has said, Republican turnout's also going to be high.
Yes.
Right? It's the independents that are really going to swing things, and that's why it's important to note, again, in all of this, people think Trump should be impeached, but that's not the same thing as remove. They want to wait and see and hear the evidence, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you can't push that faster. That's, again, we talk about the tides and political zeitgeist and things like that. You can't push this stuff. It's got its own rhythm, and no matter what you think, because you follow closely, people want to sit and think about it and deliberate. It's a big deal to remove a president. And they want to think about what the implications are, and they want to see the evidence. And so far, they've only read about it, but they haven't seen it themselves because the Democrats are still doing the closed door thing. Now, I think by now we have enough information they could probably stop that. So my recommendation isn't that you go ahead and do the impeachment vote already. It's that you go ahead and start doing public hearings to try to put all of this together so that the public can follow along and understand what you're doing. I think it's time for that, and that's the case I would make. I
think you're right about that. I'd be curious to know what the strategy actually is and when they think they'll make that move. And I think people are ready to give up on
it's like Nancy Pelosi.
Too.
Soon.
We all find out. Yeah, I guess so. Or like Donald Trump. Soon. Very soon. 2 weeks.
2 weeks
not
tops.
Sure when.
2 weeks tops.
Yeah, right.
We'll see.
So, I don't know what they're getting out of keeping it. I imagine this is staff at this point driving this. And we all do agree that they've done a better job doing the questioning. And they may have a strategy in mind for, I guess, some of these lower level players who don't need to be, who might not function quite as well under the same exposure. But, they've gathered the evidence, certainly, and it's coming out. And I don't know what they think they're gaining by having the doors closed, since the next move is always the publication of their statements. But I guess we don't hear the back and forth necessarily, but I guess it's time to hear that.
Yep.
Not sure what there may be security issues at stake when they were interviewing diplomats. But
maybe.
We'll see. I don't know who's next.
It's quite interesting that the other thing that I would highlight about this that sometimes gets lost is that the White House, Donald Trump's White House, was doing their best with Mike Pompeo's State Department to try to limit as much as possible Ambassador Taylor's testimony. Yes. They told him not to, the White House. State Department told him not to. He basically did go ahead and subpoena me then, give me some cover. So they did, and he showed up, and he told everything. And so the point is that the efforts to try to get these guys muzzled is a big fail.
Yeah, I don't know what they thought they were holding over a guy who was ready to resign in the middle of August.
Right.
Okay, well, you're fired. Oh, really? So, good. I'm glad they
basically, that's the summary of what's going on. I think that those polls are really quite illustrative and instructive. This is moving along relatively fast from a political point of view.
Yes.
It's not fast enough for us, but we got to give the public time to digest it and come along with us. The idea is that you have to bring along the independents. Democrats are ready. That's not the point. Republicans are never going to be ready. As Steve Andrew was saying, coming from a Texas perspective, they're never going to be ready. They're always going to find, well, I saw what you did. I see what you're saying. I understand that Trump actually did all the things he said he didn't do and denied. And then I know he covered it up, but that's not really a quid pro quo because I've decided it doesn't. You can't explain it to me well enough for me to be convinced. This is Monty Python's argument clinic. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. I mean, that's about the level of the resistance on the part of Republicans to admitting it's a quid pro quo. But that will change because basically the consensus is going to be, no, yeah, it is. And then it'll be, okay, fine, it's a quid pro quo, but it's not. I mean, all quid pro quos aren't bad.
Right, there's some good ones.
There's some good ones, and besides, this isn't one of the impeachable ones. And ultimately, that's going to be their defense. And you got to bring the public along if you want to change that point of view, because that is completely and totally subjective and has nothing to do with facts.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's doable. And I think this is a really interesting confluence of events here. For a while there was that movement on, we'll separate Ukraine from Russia, and that quickly became untenable. And really, honestly, everyone who knows that Ukraine sort of borders Russia and there's a lot of cross-pollination would have...
To be fair, it wasn't separate. It was Ukraine is easier to explain.
Yes.
It's all the same big story, but let's concentrate on the understandable part of it.
Yeah, although it quickly grew out of control as soon as you said, all right, well, let's just focus on the understandable thing. And then you began to take the testimony it takes to establish that simple thing. Some of it grew more
Russia's
complicated.
Part of the Ukraine thing.
Yes.
I mean, the whole reason that Ukraine is threatened is because Russia.
Right. And that's why holding up their aid was so problematic. What is interesting also is there's also an overlap. I haven't seen it played quite this way yet, but perhaps it's time. But the other extraordinarily unpopular foreign policy position is, as you mentioned, on Syria, where the common thread here is abandonment of allies for the Russian self-interest, which is extraordinarily damaging, one would say, normally for a president to say, I will abandon our allies in Ukraine to the Russian bear. And likewise, in case you thought that was a one-off or just a mistake or a situation where my self-interest drove me to this, but it won't happen again, abandoning Kurdish allies to the Russian bear just the same, this time with the additional player of the Turkish, who I don't know that the Turkish have always polled particularly well in the West generally, but in the United States perhaps in particular. And as it turns out, likewise, this problem of having rogue ambassadors, personal friends of Donald Trump, personal billionaire friends of Donald Trump in the roles of ambassadors around the world is proving problematic. Right in the middle of all of this, we found out yesterday, according to the New York Times, that the American ambassador to Hungary, where Viktor Orban is establishing his own ethno-nationalist authoritarian regime, the Trump ambassador there appears to be facilitating that movement in every way possible, and arranging for weird secret quid pro quo type situations via WhatsApp Messenger and personal communications devices. This is all happening over and over again with no clear explanation exactly why it is that Donald Trump and his minions conduct so much of their diplomacy on private servers and private communications devices. And by the way, the other overlapping story, the umbrella story to all this is all of this diplomacy is going on through unofficial channels because it is a plan ahead of time to obstruct justice should they ever be caught.
And if they are caught, it turns out that if you tell anybody, nothing will happen because Bill Barr covers it up at Department of Justice. That's all part of the same story. So let's step back and look at the bigger picture here and see how the public is absorbing all of this. Again, CNN
absorbing
poll.
Everyone.
First of all, one thing I revel in is Nancy Pelosi's favorable unfavorable is now 44-46. That's about the highest she's ever had. They've been running against her for a decade with San Francisco values,
true. Right.
And she's got a red coat and sunglasses.
Right, and I guess there you go.
And I'm so glad that Seth Moulton and Tim Ryan decided that she was incapable of actually being speaker. Yes. And you have to step back and say, you guys don't have very good political judgment, do you?
Interesting. Also, send flowers to AOC for taking the heat off Pelosi and allowing her to rise in the polls like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all her doing. But here is also something interesting talking about how the public is perceiving this. CNN poll. In your view, why do most Democrats in Congress support impeachment of Donald Trump? Is it A, because they are out to get Donald Trump at all costs? Or two, because they believe Trump committed impeachable offenses?
Yes. That's my answer.
42% say they're out to get Donald Trump at all costs, and 48% say they believe Trump committed impeachable offenses.
Well, that's why
now, let's ask about the Republicans. In your view, why do most Republicans in Congress oppose impeachment of Donald Trump? 50% of the public says because they're out to protect Trump at all costs, and 40% say because they believe Trump didn't commit impeachable offenses. The public gets it. They understand what's going on here.
All right.
Okay. Back in the day, Republicans were felt 47-42 to be out to get Clinton, and Democrats by 51-36 were out to protect Clinton. Public got it then too. Right? Yeah, Clinton did. He's guilty. He said he was guilty. Right? We by the time impeachment came, it was pretty clear that he had actually had this affair with Monica Lewinsky, and he lied about it.
Yes.
We get that. But Republicans are out to get him at all costs anyway.
Yeah. Though they deny this even today.
And they totally understood that Democrats are protecting him, even though, he actually did what he said he did.
Yeah, there was that.
Right. So that's when you look at the parties, that's why independents and people not that interested in politics sometimes shrug and say, yeah, they all do it. But in this particular case, they get that actually the Democrats are trying to impeach Trump because they think they believe that the Democrats think that Trump committed impeachable offenses. That's good. Yes. It's not just politics when that happens. Whereas defending Trump is pure politics because everybody knows he really did it. That's what these numbers are telling us.
I'm glad that it seems to be working. This, despite the fact that former impeachment manager for the House, Lindsey Graham, out there saying the exact opposite, as though everyone has forgotten that he was pressing the impeachment. It was his responsibility to prosecute the impeachment of Bill Clinton.
And then has the gall to saying if a Democrat did this, we'd be all over it.
Yeah, right. It's amazing how they double dip on these claims of victimhood, these guys. It wasn't if we had done this to a Democrat, you'd be all over us. You did do it to a Democrat. We watched you.
So I'll be on tomorrow, and we'll say hello then. Be sort of a regular show, but fascinating, and absolutely take a look at the Q poll and the CNN poll. You'll learn a lot.
Okay, and thanks very much, and thanks for bringing us Steve. It was a real pleasure. Thanks for putting him up.
And Abby. Don't forget Abby.
Yes. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Well, that was a pleasant surprise. Makes the time go faster when you have a special surprise guest on there. And we forgot to talk about all these other political things, but, we covered them in the general sense, and I liked it that way. So thanks again to Steve and Andrew joining us on the program, and thanks to Greg for putting them up. I appreciate that, and fun idea getting on the air. This it just goes to show you that the things can be shown to you, which is important, especially on radio where we didn't show anything. But I'm pleased to have had him on the air. I know a lot of people. I'll mention on the air. I know there are a lot of people who miss Armando's participation in things, and I don't know if we're quite ready for that just yet. But we do miss him, and it was pointed out that it's true that we do lack a certain perspective now. It's not that we lack for curmudgeonly and argumentative perspective. We do have plenty of that. But that the show's regular lineup, if you can call the occasional drop-by from Armando, in addition to our regular Wednesdays with Joan and Monday, Wednesday, Thursday with Greg, that's more of a regular lineup, I think. But we don't get the perspective of a person of color on the show, which it's interesting because, I mean, it's funny the way that worked out. Like at the end, I said, yes, I guess we really don't have that. And I just never really thought of it in that way because, of course, we conduct the show so much like just a bunch of friends discussing the news in front of a microphone that happens to stream the stuff out for us. But true, and it was a good point, and there are certainly things, particularly, of course, when we're talking about politics in Florida, which has a tremendous, a large Latino population, although it's still chiefly Cuban-American there, but a lot of Puerto Rican influence as well. Not so much the Latin American, Central American, I guess I should say, perspective. But it's missing, and there's a sensibility, particularly when we are talking about politics in that community, that is missing. We can read about, we can absorb, we can appreciate, but doesn't occur to us first. But, of course, we can get that perspective probably from elsewhere, and other perspectives, too, which were likewise missing from the show, even when we did have Armando. So a good point made there, and something that we haven't given enough thought to cultivating, chiefly because, of course, we do the show this way. Like, hey, would you like to be a part of the show? Because I know you and have known you for many years. Sure, it's an easy thing to then call in the morning and just have a conversation. Whereas some of the voices that we would want to include perhaps as voices of color on the show are not as familiar to me. I don't know them personally in the same way that I have known Greg and Joan and Armando and others and Steven from way back in the olden days. And a lot of these folks are West Coast based and working out of the offices of Daily Kos, whereas we are East Coast based and working out of the offices of my kitchen and Greg's as well. And waking people up to join on a regular basis for an East Coast morning show when you don't have a long-standing relationship with them is something of a different prospect. Not one we can't overcome. And certainly, I guess the answer to that is, well, perhaps we ought to be making more of a conscious effort to, at a minimum, include reading and discussion of the pieces that they provide for us at their leisure in a written format at Daily Kos, and discussing things that way. And I guess I'll throw this one out to both those who have made the comment and those to whom the comment registers and makes some sense. Don't forget that it's an important part of things that we are more than willing to do to reflect what your interests are and what you think are important stories, even if you shy away from the still very simple and very easy and nothing to worry about thing to do of reading us those articles yourself or your own compositions and recording it and sending it to me via email for inclusion in the show. And very often, don't worry, I will take some time to edit things, and I make you sound better and more professional than I often do. I will spend some time editing out your ums and ahs if those things worry you. So don't worry about that. But even if you don't want to take that step, or just want to use it as an intermediate step, send me the article you're thinking about. Send me the composition that you've written, the diary that you've written at Daily Kos that you think belongs as a part of our discourse, and allow me to do it if you would be so kind. And that way we can include some more of that perspective, at least make an effort in doing it, even if we can't bring you the offhand comments and analysis of people for whom this is always front of mind. Just want to at least acknowledge that was a true and valid point, and assure you, if any of you actually thought it, no indication that anybody did, but in case you thought that there was some sort of conscious effort to deny those voices, no, it's just a matter of, well, we just do things casually here, and the people that we know and are familiar with who like to call us and chat with us, call us and chat with us. And that's it. I mean, we could be putting in more effort in cultivating that, but that would require a professional operation, a full-time professional operation with time for production and guest recruitment and all of those things. And we don't have that set up here yet, though we might one day. But that requires staff, and that requires money. And, well, so far it seems most of us are pretty well satisfied with the casual approach to things. However, if any of you are millionaires, or better yet, billionaires, and want to drop gigantic amounts of money in upping the professionalism, let me know. I will probably say we'll take the money and say no to you, because that would be a quid pro quo if we were to actually professionalize based on your having given us money to do so. I understand that's the way things work in the world, but you know how we are sensitive these days about quid pro quo. You don't want to walk into that trap. All right. Moving on, there are plenty of other stories, and it being Wednesday, the door remains open as always for Joan McCarter. What a bonanza we'll have here of old-time Daily Kos contributing editors, if we can get things right for her. There's plenty happening here. I've got a couple of stories, some of which I'll save for her analysis. And for others, we can save them for your analysis. You see, you can send us your analysis, not your analysis. Don't send us that. That we cannot process. Although, if you do, I will just simply add that to the 55-gallon drums that I'm saving for Donald Trump's eventual funeral. All right. Now, somewhere around here, this would be the application I need to find all the various pieces I wanted to add to the puzzle. I mentioned to you, or I mentioned to Greg, and by extension to you, that there was a Hungary angle to this, the country. I know it's getting crazy. Not only Turkey, but also Hungary involved in this. It's like a festival of fifth grade puns going on here, but not intentionally. Oh, look at this annoying style of a new kind of New York Times pop-up. You'll all be excited to know, those of you not boycotting the New York Times. The article I grabbed was, not originally this one. I got to scroll back a little further. This was one that came up alongside the original Hungary one. Where is it? There we are. In Hungary, a freewheeling Trump ambassador undermines U.S. diplomats. Does this sound familiar to you? A new story. We didn't get a chance to share this one yet. Subheader on this one. He brokered a White House meeting for Hungary's prime minister. He spends $320,000 on parties. Sounds like those guys. And takes positions at odds with American policy. That's more problematic. He says he knows what President Trump wants. And I'm not really sure exactly how to take that. But it's a rather lengthy story. We're probably not going to get through all of it. But I just wanted to raise this emerging piece of news with you. The story, by the way, illustrated with a photo of all people, Paul Anka. Yeah, Paul Anka serenading Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary with a personalized rendition of My Way, which is really strange, to say the least. Very, very gangster in the presentation. At the United States Embassy's 4th of July party in Budapest. Never would have guessed this would happen. The reporting here is from Matt Apuso and Benjamin Novak. Published yesterday, Dateline Budapest. Though I don't know whether they were actually there for the reporting. The annual Independence Day celebration at the United States Embassy in Budapest. Usually a modest garden party. And a chance for the ambassador to celebrate American freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. But of course, our new American ambassadors hate that stuff. This year, the ambassador, David B. Kornstein, I believe. I've not heard it said, but it appears to be spelled that way. Kornstein. I don't know whether it goes with Kornstein or not. But anyway, he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a blowout gala for 800 guests. He flew in the singer Paul Anka from California. The guest of honor, Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary. It is, of course, where Budapest is, so no surprise. But Orban, a bit of a surprise because he is, of course, a guy who has curtailed the very freedoms the event was meant to highlight. And that seems like a strange match. Standing at a lectern, Mr. Kornstein declared Mr. Orban the perfect partner, whatever that means, and a very, very strong and good leader. He does know how Trump speaks. Mr. Anka serenaded the Hungarian leader with a personalized rendition of My Way. I did it my way, with brutal repression. For many in the room, it was a bewildering spectacle. An American ambassador lavishing praise on a far-right leader whose party has methodically eroded Hungarian democracy and pushed anti-Semitic tropes, like Sebastian Gorka. But it was just another demonstration of Mr. Kornstein's pattern of emboldening Mr. Orban.
That dreadful Hungarian?
Yes, that's the one, the dreadful Hungarian. I knew we had a sound effect for dreadful Hungarian somewhere around here. Since becoming ambassador in June of 2018, Mr. Kornstein has assiduously courted Mr. Orban, giving the Hungarian leader unexpected influence in the Trump administration. Mr. Kornstein used his decades-long friendship with President Trump to help broker a coveted Oval Office meeting for Mr. Orban last May, a meeting now under scrutiny by impeachment investigators in Washington. Why? Because, of course, it would, it would help establish our pattern, now emerging, of trading Oval Office meetings for personal favors with European leaders who can somehow can also incorporate doing the bidding of Russian foreign policy. Very interesting. And an obvious parallel, I think, here. But yes, the idea of trading Oval Office visits for political favors with European leaders is something of a troubling trend. Now, to continue, at the time, some White House officials tried to stop the meeting, citing Mr. Orban's anti-democratic record in Hungary and his growing closeness to Russia. What? Russia's back in the picture here? I can't believe it. The meeting went ahead, despite basically all expert opinion to the contrary, as is often the case with any Trump decision. And Mr. Orban is said to have used it, this is the interesting part, used it to fuel the president's suspicions about Ukraine. Now, that's the other story that I grabbed here and almost began with. It's linked here to, at this point in the text, to another New York Times piece. Peter Baker involved in this one. Peter Baker and Nick Fandos, but also written and published yesterday. Hungary's Orban gave Trump harsh analysis. I'm going to hang on and answer my phone here, and we'll read you this headline one more time, this time so Joan can hear it. Hungary's Orban gave Trump harsh analysis of Ukraine before key meeting. Now, my real point in bringing up what was going on in Hungary was to show you that the same story was repeating itself over and over again in different locations with different players. But there's even, I didn't even get a third of the way through the article before we have to jump out and point out that they are more closely related stories than you even thought. But what I'd like you to take away from the brief bit of the story we've been able to share is that there are personal friends of Trump's who have been placed in ambassadorial jobs, and this happens in a lot of administrations, who are, frankly, wholly unqualified for those jobs, and that probably even happens sometimes a lot too, but who consider themselves independent players, unbound not only by normal procedures, process, and diplomatic expectations, but who also consider themselves to be such close friends with the president, Donald Trump, that's the guy who says he's president, that they don't need to take direction from our State Department about how to handle affairs in the countries to which they've been assigned. They simply say, very much like Donald Trump, I know what he wants. I know what he thinks. I know what he would like. I'm just going to do that. And as it happens, sometimes they often get it right. They do the things that Donald Trump would like, but of course they are very frequently the wrong thing to do for America, not to mention just done in the wrong way. So not only do we have that going on with the ambassador to the European Union, Sondland, and other actors in the State Department with respect to Ukraine, but it's happening in other really sensitive hot spots in Europe like Hungary. And then on top of all of that, it turns out that half of the conspiracy theories about what's going on in Ukraine are being fed to Trump via the regime in Hungary, which is amazing. And I never really would have thought that that would happen. But I guess if you stop and take a look at a map of Central and Eastern Europe, you will see exactly why. Now, having put that on the record, I ask you, Joan McCarter, how you doing? What's new? I don't necessarily have to put you on the spot about Viktor Orban, but okay. That is good.
Yeah, it never even occurred to me that Hungary was pulled into the whole mess too, which of course it is.
Sure. And again, as the article points out, all you have to do is look at a map. As it turns out, there's some tensions between Ukraine and Hungary and a significant ethnic Hungarian population in Ukraine. Ukraine has had it's a crossroads. So, so there is some actual, bilateral tension as between the two of them. But, throw in the authoritarian ethno-nationalism, the ties to Russia, the secret diplomacy, the use of WhatsApp to communicate between a freelancing, independent player of a diplomat, of an ambassador, along with the same thing happening in Ukraine, the same thing happening with Saudi Arabia and Jared Kushner. Mm-hmm. Amazingly enough, everywhere that there are flashpoints around the world and Russians are looking to get a toehold in places where they have either never had one or been displaced, we find instead freelancing billionaire weirdos communicating over WhatsApp with local dictators over and over and over again. All of which, by the way, as we mentioned earlier, part and parcel of a overarching plan to obstruct justice, should justice ever get wind of what's going on, and violate and to prevent them from getting wind of what's going on by routinely violating the Presidential Records Act. All impeachable, all by itself, every time, over and over again. There's not, when people say nothing impeachable has happened here, not only is that wrong, it's the actual opposite of the truth. Not only has it happened, it's happened 15 times in 15 different countries with 15 different actors, and only one guy is common to all those scenarios. And guess what? He's the guy being impeached. So it's pretty solid.
The impeachment ball of wax just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes, right. And by that we mean Donald Trump himself, the ball of wax that he is. Okay. So what else is new? I see, I had saved for comment that there was, I guess, new reporting on, or reminding everybody of the reporting on Stephen Menashe. What's his status? Have we missed it?
He gets a vote tomorrow in Judiciary.
Okay. So we're still in committee. Okay.
I mean, it keeps being postponed because Republicans aren't particularly happy with him.
Yeah. Well,
for the usual reasons, they think he's not deferential enough.
Oh.
He didn't answer Kennedy's questions.
Oh, yeah.
You know Kennedy.
Right. Well, we do learn in political science class that you have to be responsive to at least one of the parties in Congress in order to have a champion, right? So that's...
but, Chairman Lindsey Graham is... I don't know quite what Lindsey Graham is doing right now.
Yeah.
He's losing his GD mind.
Yes.
Does he have this vote anyway and give the finger to the Republicans who are not very happy with him, including Joni Ernst added. Mm-hmm. No, was it Ernst added to Judiciary? Or Blackburn?
No, that's a good question. Not one I monitor closely. I'll check for us. I'll do the look up the Judiciary
Did they put both of them on?
Maybe.
Remember last year there was sort of the optics problem of there not being a single woman on the Republican side of the round, half moon desk thing that they've got for the senators.
Yeah.
So they added.
Let's see, who have we got? Joni Ernst, yes. Oh, both of them, yep. Yeah, Ernst, Blackburn, occupying two of the... I do
remember things sometimes.
Yeah, you got there, right? They're occupying two of the bottom four spots in the majority's lineup. But, seniority being what it is.
And I think it was Ernst that was particularly unhappy with Menashe, but Ernst is going to be particularly unhappy with a lot of things because she's running for re-election next year.
I said seniority, but that seems to be flexible. Things get mixed up a little bit in the Senate because you just have a smaller pool to draw from. But if they're listed here in order of seniority, this is how they usually list them here. Somehow Josh Hawley ranks ahead of Joni Ernst and Marsha Blackburn. Blackburn new to the Senate, but Hawley is too. So what's he doing above Joni Ernst?
Why?
I don't know. It's almost like they didn't like women a whole lot there. No, that's not it either. And he's about 14 years old, too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's their mess to clean up. But yes, they do have now two women on the committee, making a huge impact. We forgot they were there.
Meanwhile, yesterday they filed cloture on a new, I believe, district court nominee who's like 36-year-old a law professor and whose claim to fame is running a pro-Kavanaugh social media campaign.
Yeah. So I'm a federal judge,
appointment for him, sure.
Yeah. And they love the 30-somethings, 5 years perhaps out of law school, never tried a case, et cetera, et cetera. Just like, what was the last one was the ghost hunter that did this. And he did not make it. Right.
That was a little bit too far. While everything else is going on, things are very chaotic on the Hill with impeachment and everything else.
Yes.
McConnell's just kind of taking advantage of the distraction to ram these through.
Well, I mean, it's good
and it
strategy.
Is very hard to keep up. I haven't had a chance to write about Menashe yet because there's just too much going on.
Right. Some
including
of that
elections
probably
next month in some states.
Yes. Right. That's true. Also, there's plenty happening. I mean, it's not bad strategy from. I mean, no one's ever accused him of being a poor strategist, really.
No.
So that's that's not surprising, I guess. But it's good to take advantage of it. In addition to not only our attention being elsewhere because of impeachment, that's also even happening in a different body, in a different house. So all eyes over there. I have, he continues to pretend that he's part of the strategy of claiming that Democrats are do-nothing members of Congress because they're all focused on impeachment. But his role in all of this is it wouldn't matter whether you did anything or not. I'm going to kill it all anyhow.
There's something like 200, 400, I've lost count at this point, bills that the House has passed sitting on his desk that he could bring up at any time if he wanted to actually be not a do-nothing body. So
I wonder what that looks like. I don't have any actual bills on my desk, but there are probably, I've lost count of the papers that are here, and it looks terrible. Yeah. I imagine his desk must be a mess, unless it's just figuratively speaking, and I think it is. Yeah. He doesn't read them anyway. So, so we've got that going on and him squashing all of the legislation. And I did just see Tegan Goddard's Twitter feed with a tantalizing thought. Will Trump shut down government to fight impeachment? I don't know if that's effective.
That was what I was just writing about this morning.
Okay, great. I happen to have hit on that.
So it's a segue. We don't know.
Perfect. I don't know how that would fight impeachment exactly, but it
would just
really
be
matter.
Fighting.
Yeah, right. We're going to fight, so what's the difference? How we fight or about what? Let's just fight. Impeachment, or rather, a government shutdown wouldn't shut down an impeachment process. Of course, Congress can work through a government shutdown, but I gather that the thinking, if you can call it that, is, well, if they shut down the government, Trump and Republicans will say the government is shut down because Democrats, rather than taking care of the business of appropriations and budgetary deal-making, spent all their energy and time on impeachment and neglected this. But I don't know if the process will really shape up that way.
Trump lashing out.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine
and retreating into his safe place, which is fighting for his border wall.
That's true. He might be most comfortable there. I figured that Republicans would say it was Democrats' fault because of their obsession over impeachment, but I guess it's possible that they might say something different.
If it comes to that, they would. Republicans don't want to shut down.
Usually not. And this one doesn't help with impeachment any. So, but I guess it's...
And they took a huge, huge hit just This is October, 10 months ago. In January, when that extended shutdown was really bad for them.
Yeah.
Really bad for them. And it was a partial shutdown. This one would be bigger. Because it's pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit to where we're actually at in terms of the budget and appropriations process.
Okay. Well, we'll summarize and then take a break.
Yeah,
and
right
do it
after
again.
the break.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll save that for when we actually have time to do it on the other side. But that's a real serious possibility, and it may be driven with a strategic eye, or it may just be, like you said, when Trump gets in trouble, Trump likes a fight, and here's one. Let's have it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bad news. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. A bit of breaking news. In addition to our government shutdown story, you were just telling me that word is that Matt Gaetz is leading a pack of Republicans to try to do the same dumb thing he failed to do last time, get into the closed joint committee hearings, or rather, not hearings, but depositions that are going on, even though they know they'll all be getting kicked out. That's okay. Just
he's got leadership helping him this time. Steve Scalise's with him.
Okay, he's always a huge help, I guess. I don't know. I wonder whether. I mean, I'm trying to think whether there's really nothing that even like members of the committee can do in terms of inviting them as guests if the chairman has the votes to say no. So, all right. Well, that's what they're doing with their time.
Storming the castle.
I guess. And there's no point in letting them in anyway. As we've seen, people who have had access to the hearings simply come out and lie about what's happening inside, even when they know that the transcript is going to be released.
Right.
So, I'm not sure what the point is of doing that. But, well,
they're trying to attack Adam Schiff, really.
Yes.
It's all about focusing on Adam Schiff being whatever they say he's being, a bully, doing this improperly. They're trying to keep it on process.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
And they did try to offer a resolution, I guess, censuring Schiff or something like that yesterday, which again, you got to win the election if you want to move something like that, even if it was proper, which it wasn't. But they tried to make a big deal out of it, and I think mostly the news ignored it because it was a story about a thing that didn't happen in the House of Representatives when there's an impeachment story to chase. So no go on that one. But we owe an explanation and some time to the government shutdown story if you want to return to that. Of course, you're free to run away from it if it's annoying and stupid.
Yeah, it's worth talking about because
right.
It's kind of our government that we're paying for.
Sort of.
Yeah. So,
yes,
you might remember that back in August, because they were gone all of August, July, they reached an agreement on spending levels. So we got a budget for 2 years. We got a debt ceiling hike for 2 years. Not necessarily a smart idea, but at least that's one thing taken away from Trump for now. Mm-hmm. But with that, it's just the spending levels, not the actual spending bills.
Okay.
So they also passed a continuing resolution to fund government through November 21st. November 21st is now less than a month away.
Yes.
We've got about 3.5 weeks of actual congressional work time between now and then. And they have 12 appropriations bills to pass.
Mm-hmm. As usual, yes.
It's not going to happen.
No. Rare event anyway these days, but with no time on the clock and no reason to expect any cooperation on the horizon and people actually contemplating a shutdown on purpose, I guess. Well, maybe contemplating isn't
It's always lurking out there as a possibility, and the possibility is just a little bit higher now with Trump being Trump, fully enraged over impeachment.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're actually trying. McConnell this week, yesterday, put through for cloture a bill for agriculture, transportation, commerce, housing and urban development, interior and justice, as well as the FDA, EPA, and National Science Foundation. So,
all right.
That's, with the exception possibly of justice, that's the non-controversial stuff. A minibus with all of those bills jammed together, Senate approved cloture for that 92-2.
Okay.
So they're trying to get stuff off the table. Even McConnell is. But that leaves, of course, Department of Defense. They're working on an agreement on that. And Homeland Security, which is where border funding would be.
Yes, okay.
And Trump, at this point, last we heard from the White House was saying he isn't in a mood to sign any spending bills, including any domestic spending bills, until he gets his border wall money.
Oh, all right.
Where have we heard that before? And how did that work out last time?
Yeah, and I mean, I think everybody's impression of it last time was that he somehow, in declaring his emergency, stole the money anyway, so what do you need more for? And now, of course, he didn't steal enough to complete the thing.
Yeah.
But
or get it painted black or put spikes on top or
snakes and alligators.
Whatever it is he needs. So whether that's just the usual White House bluster, they said it because they know it'll make Trump happy, or whether it's real, who knows? We don't know anything with Trump, ever. But we do know he's fully capable of having a temper tantrum and taking it out on the entire nation and shutting down government. Because he's done it already.
Right. That's definitely true. Just like Newt Gingrich, who's back at a third career as a Trump apologist on television somehow.
Right.
But okay. And this is a thing that they think they can win. And I'm not certainly... I'm not certain that it is a thing they think, even that they think they can win. They just don't really know what else to do, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So that's where we're at.
Wait and see.
They're looking
We'll see what happens.
Usually what happens is they extend it for 3 weeks, and it will be December 15th is the next continuing resolution expiration date because they want to get it all done before Christmas. This time they're saying maybe we'll push it into 2020. Maybe we'll even push it as far as the end of the fiscal year in 2020 because we've got the election coming up and we know we have to do something by then as a continuing resolution, as spending levels set for what they currently are, rather than the new levels they agreed upon in July.
Yes.
So, trying to take it entirely out of Trump's hands until just before the election by having a continuing resolution through all of the next fiscal year. That's on the table, apparently. Sometime next year is on the table, apparently. If they follow true to course, it'll happen just before Christmas this year. Who knows?
Yeah, well, that's the usual MO. They feel like they can force things that way. Although, I don't know. there's so many lunatics there anymore. I guess because they don't hold sway in the House anymore. The House Freedom Caucus type loons that would actually try to, say, well, what happens if we don't fix it by Christmas? Not as much of an issue.
But the problem is the House Freedom Caucus loons are now in the White House. Yes,
so they could send it back from there with a veto, I suppose. But that seems like they're dumb and they're crazy, and I don't know whether they realize this, but fault for a shutdown is pretty easy to identify if it's done by veto.
Right.
But, like last time. So okay.
That assumes they have any kind of control over Trump.
Yeah.
And we just don't know right now.
That is true. I mean, you could say all of those things and every advisor can reiterate the same, and he could sneak into his office at 2 a.m. I doubt that very much. He would be sneaking into his office. He could carry the papers away with him and sign them in bed when no one's looking.
Yeah.
We don't know.
And, of course, over it all is the other unknown, and that's the schedule for impeachment.
Yes. Okay.
Because once that happens, it pretty much brings the rest of the stuff to a halt. Not that, the only thing is bringing to a halt in the Senate right now would be judicial nominations, but it would also be funding. But we don't know. And the revelations that are continuing on a daily basis in that secured room that Matt Gaetz can't get into is what's going to drive it. I mean, there are a lot of threads emerging that they have to decide whether they need to pull.
Yeah. All right. Now, you mentioned, by the way, among the separate and outside of the mini omnibus or minibus bill that you mentioned, DOD is usually not left out. Is often one of the first taken care of, and it's still outstanding.
It's still outstanding. They're having a hard time finding agreement there with the House because McConnell and team want to lard it up.
Okay.
House says no. We've got to have parity with domestic spending. So that's one of the fights.
Is that where the
McConnell,
aid would live?
If McConnell can succeed in moving this one, he wants to do DOD next.
Okay. Interesting. Where does Ukrainian aid live? It's military in nature. Does it come in the DOD bill, or is it a state department
I think some
bill?
comes in DOD, some comes from state through USAID.
Yes, I guess every department.
So it's in multiple places, I believe.
Energy, as it turns out.
Yes. What if Rick Perry is the guy behind all of this? What if he's the mastermind?
Like the old SNL sketch about the old Phil Hartman Reagan sketch that Greg loves so much. Rick Perry dancing with the stars, and then quick, everybody back in here.
He just keeps popping up in pictures with these people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess he thought he had plenty of time to do whatever it was that he thought the president would really appreciate, because he doesn't know what an energy secretary does. So I might as well do this. Okay.
Sometimes, speaking of things White House and crazy people, Mick Mulvaney might actually be in trouble in keeping his acting chief of staff job. Whether that means he would get to go back and be OMB director again, we don't know. But Trump apparently is not happy with Mick Mulvaney and is looking at either Stephen Mnuchin or Kellyanne Conway.
Yes,
to come in and act as chief of staff.
Yeah, and Conway might do that. I mean, what is she doing now, right? Nothing, as far as I can tell. But it did. I read that as an indication also that, well, Trump, of course, keeps a pretty closed and tight inner circle for a guy who considers himself a schmoozer anyway. But I read that as I can't afford, as chief of staff, I would have to read a new person into our criminal conspiracy. So I need somebody who's already in on it.
Right.
That I don't have to convince either to keep up the act or have that meeting where I say, listen, it's important that as my new chief of staff, you understand from a strategic standpoint, all the things that they're saying are true. So with that in mind, I need you to defend this. And they might say, oh, my God, I didn't mean to do that. I resign. Whereas,
and you need to be able to go on TV and do it convincingly and do it well, which Mulvaney clearly can't do.
he really did a terrible job on that.
He did a terrible, and that's what's got him in trouble, of course.
Okay.
It's his performance on TV. Trump hates people who can't perform on TV.
I just want everyone to know we are guilty. Oh, why did I say that? Oh, I'm so bad at this job. Well, okay. Whereas Conway would be adept. I don't think Mnuchin, he's untested in that.
He hasn't done a lot of the TV stuff.
Yeah.
So.
When he does, it's about Treasury stuff, and he lies pretty easily with that stuff, but we don't know whether he has what it takes to go on there and say the opposite of everything he knows to be true. Conway has got that. And
she can do that better than anybody since Ari Fleischer.
I guess so. Yeah. So, yeah, chief of staff, that would be an exciting promotion for her, I'm sure. I guess she'd take it.
I don't know if her marriage would survive it, but that's a whole new story. I have no idea what's going on with those people. I think they're trying to get a reality show.
I guess so, right. That's the only explanation for that. That would be very tense at home. So, yeah, she could be chief of staff. Mnuchin, I don't think has it in him. And I can't think of any other possibilities.
Also, just like OMB should be a full-time job.
Yes.
Treasury should be a full-time job.
Yeah. It's difficult to, Trump has shown he has no problem with having acting officials handle everything. In fact, he seems to prefer it. So I suppose they could move Mnuchin, but I don't know that Mnuchin wants that. And speaking, I guess we're talking about the marriages. I don't know if his wife wants him to move away from the job where they print money.
Yeah. Where she gets to put her hands on money.
Yeah, and they can travel more or less independently of Trump, whereas in the chief of staff job, they'd be tied to his schedule. I don't know how much she likes that.
Yeah.
So.
But, that's all speculation. It does seem pretty likely that Mulvaney doesn't survive this, though. Huh. Because he was really, 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 really bad.
He was. For a while, though, people were theorizing, maybe Trump really wanted that to be done. But so far, I haven't seen that. That hasn't survived. Most people think. No, he recognized that was a confession, an admission against interest.
The reviews were so bad.
How else are you going to review it? He just confessed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all right. Well, that's an interesting development, certainly. And this would be how many chiefs of staff have we had? Priebus and Kelly and then Mulvaney. Is it just 3? Or am I missing a 4th? I feel like there might have been more.
I think just the 3.
It's National Security Advisor that we've had 4.
And press secretary.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well,
not that it matters who's press secretary because they, don't press secretary anyway. So
yeah, I'm not sure I understand that whole business either. Nor do I really understand what's the difference between having press availability in a driveway versus in the press room,
the briefing room.
I don't know why they think that that's different or that they're denying the press corps something they want. But the press corps keeps saying that it's true, so I guess it must mean something to them. But although as I was saying, the fact that they're having their pressers in the driveway, it occurred to me, so is Jacob Wohl. We're no different. The White House and Jacob Wohl both are having all their press conferences in the driveway. That's odd.
It's very odd.
Yeah. he had another
Apparently
one.
Jacob Wool yesterday, it was about Ted Cruz being a swinger.
All right.
That came out of the blue. I mean, why?
I don't know. It did
Ted
come out of the blue.
Cruz?
And I didn't realize that he was, maybe he thought that attacking a Republican would automatically make people say, well, see, he's a real journalist because both sides. But nobody noticed this one. And ordinarily we've been not paying attention to what he's been doing lately. Anyway, just noting that he's calling another press conference is enough. But yeah, I saw that he was doing that, and then I saw it was Ted Cruz, and I am not certain what came of it. And ordinarily these things collapse, and the main witness withdraws their claims often before the press conference happens. I don't know if that happened with the Ted Cruz one or not.
Maybe they found his secret Twitter feed.
Yeah, well, that could be.
What would his anonymous Twitter name be? I still laugh over Pierre Delecto. At least 3 times a day. That's a great one.
That's the best one since Carlos Danger, I think.
Yes. It's even better than Carlos Danger. Because it's just so perfectly Mitt Romney. Pierre Delecto. Of
I don't even
it's
know
Mitt
what
Romney.
that means. But okay. I'm glad he did it, I guess. No,
we needed a laugh.
It doesn't mean anything. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that one. Between that and, as I discussed with Stephen this morning, the Cosmopolitan story of Trump sneaking into models' hotel rooms and taking it to a new level is a new one. Which, I expect to just streak across the sky and disappear like every other one of his sexual impropriety stories.
I wonder if he has what we called in the dorm, I don't know what you actually call them, rape locks.
Oh.
His hotel rooms.
That's a good question.
Whether you have that bar you can pull across.
Yeah, not in 1990s he didn't, but I don't know if anybody did in the 1990s. It's a good question. Go onto the properties and check that now. We could check the one in D.C.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know anybody who's stayed in one recently who would give me an honest answer to that, but that's a good question. I guess that's why they have them. If you're staying in
a Trump hotel and you're female and it has a rape lock, use it.
Yeah, I guess so, because the boss thinks he's entitled to your key and might come into your room. So this time, force him to use the cameras instead.
Speaking of,
yes,
Lindsey Graham stayed in his hotels, didn't he, at one point?
That's possible. I don't know. I don't remember offhand, but it certainly
I don't know if trying to figure out what Trump has on Lindsey Graham, if Trump has anything on Lindsey Graham, is even worth it, or if Lindsey Graham is just Lindsey Graham.
Maybe. I don't know whether he stayed in his property or not. I mean, it can't just be golf because golf is not that expensive. You can play.
Well, and it's out in the open and it's public, and Lindsey Graham's not going to be groping caddies, so.
I don't know.
He might.
It's possible.
We don't know. If you're a caddy for Lindsey Graham and you have a story,
DM us. I don't really want you to do that, but and mine are not open, but that's what reporters say, and we're just playing here. It is possible. I've read an awful lot about Trump and his wiring of his properties, including some lesser-known ones, not the hotels, but he, I guess, maintains a series of more private residences, including a couple of townhouses around the Virginia golf course that he has had politicians stay in as a safe house back before he was elected. But those were fully wired for video as well for security reasons. I'm not really sure what you needed to secure in the bedrooms, but maybe. I'll have to look up.
Which you would think would make him be a little bit more careful when he's staying at the Moscow Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah, and he said that was his excuse. Like there can't possibly be compromat, P-tape or otherwise, because I know as a hotelier, I know that you can record compromat inside your hotel room all the time because I don't know, maybe I've done that. So I would definitely not engage in something like that. That was his excuse. But then that's just one of dozens of times in which he's said the opposite of the truth, or just denied that something had happened when there was documentary evidence that it had. So I don't know how to take it.
You can't believe anything that comes out of Trump's mouth.
No.
So.
Oh, wells. What else happening here? I do see that more developments with Matt Gaetz, and I guess he's got several dozen members there now.
Storming the hallway.
Yes, storming the skiff, as he's saying, which, is not stormable, really, for a number of reasons, not just a matter of getting permission from the chairman, but, it's a secure facility. So I wonder what happens if you try to push your way in as a member of Congress. I don't think they hit you or gas you the same way they might with someone else.
I think they just don't let you in the room.
Yeah. I'm sort of curious about how physical these guys will want to get.
Standoff in progress, says Andrew Desiderio. I don't know who does he. Politico congressional reporter.
Okay.
Source tells me after House Republicans tried flooding the skiff with non-committee members, many brought their cell phones too into the classified area, where they're not allowed.
Yeah.
Standoff in progress, source adds. I don't know what kind of standoff you could be having.
They're standing off to the side saying, we want to be let in. And the police are saying, not only, they're probably not even having to say no. They're just like, well, these guys aren't actually trying to get in. So. Okay.
What they're achieving, I'm not sure, but it will make their base happy. So.
Yes. Mike Musson said, hit him with the mace, not the gas spray, but the mace of the House. But then they have to suspend proceedings in the House in order to do that. It's a magical item that if you remove it from the dais, you can't proceed with the House session for some reason. But
the
I don't know.
Legislators.
That's
stuff,
true.
Right?
We could during 1 minute go hit him.
Yeah.
It's about time.
I've never entirely understood the point of the mace.
Yeah, I mean, symbolic. But yeah, that would be interesting, though. I mean, with these, with the lunatics that we have these days, and their active interest in breaking the rules and smashing norms, it's supposed to be, as members of the House, if you're speaking and you're not supposed to, and you are presented with the mace, like they actually would have the sergeant at arms hold the thing in front of you, and that's supposed to be enough to strike terror into you, and you stop talking out of respect, either out of respect for the mace or fear of being hit with it. But it's a decorative ceremonial item. They're never going to hit you with it, even if they thought they could get away with actually slugging a member of Congress on the floor, which they can't. But I'd love to see that at some point and just see Matt Gaetz saying, what am I supposed to be afraid of this thing? Screw you. And just try to shout over it. Although I'm not certain that comes out well for us or just excites the Republican base more than anything else. I imagine we lose in that contest for some reason. But all right, just that's what you're supposed to do with the thing. And I'm with you. I don't understand why that would why we would trust that would make a lunatic stop.
No.
So
we know that lunatics don't respond to anything that respects the institution of the Congress.
Yeah.
Lunatics or Mitch McConnell.
Right. True. I wonder if he would even say, that mace doesn't scare me. I only care about the Senate. So.
Of course he would.
Yeah. I imagine he would. Well, all right.
Whatever happens in the House is below Mitch McConnell's notice.
Yeah.
It doesn't, Look at the fact that he says that the houses do nothing.
Yeah, right. I mean,
enthusiasm.
Yeah, I don't know how you can get along with that. Oh, I got the wrong button going here. That was supposed to be our music, not our enthusiasms thing. But that music, of course, means we do have to wrap up, which is, I think we've kind of exhausted our discussable topics. at this point. But there are many more, of course, and next Wednesday I look forward to picking up all the brand new ones with you. Thanks for coming by today.
They'll all be on the front page of Daily Kos, and check out our elections coverage, because there are elections happening.
Right, that's true. Virginia being one of the places. Yeah. All right, well, we'll check in with all of that, and I'm sure there's some last-minute money that can be tossed around, too. And I appreciate it. Thanks very much for standing by for today's discussion of the lunacy that's happening. And thanks for updating us on the shutdown situation, an emerging flashpoint that now I feel like we're on top of. And if you would like the full background of that, Joan's got it up. Has it hit front page yet?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, go check it out. And if not, it's already in her diaries and available.
You can see it over on the right-hand side. Yep.
Yes, easy enough to do. Thanks, Joan. Appreciate it. And talk to you again next week.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right.
Take care. Bye. All right. Do stay tuned now for Justice's program, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, coming up next. We'll brief you on what's up.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
As usual, he's got another story that I absolutely meant to get to today and couldn't, but thankfully he's here to follow up for us. The major Trump inaugural committee donor will plead guilty, can you believe it, to hiding his work, you'll never believe what kind of work it was, as a foreign agent to gain access to high-level government officials. Unbelievable. Happened again.